Hello, and welcome back to yet another Geek Show, and you should just focus on keeping this feather afloat. Just breathe. This is your host, Alex Ecker.
This is your host, Dalton Munnell. I hope that was relaxing.
This is your hope, Josh Keir. Man, I don't know about you guys, but I could really go for some strawberries right now.
I could go
I'm quite
for
fond
some...
of the gold variety.
It felt a little too B-side for me.
Third joke.
Wow. Okay. That that was stretching it. All right. Good lord.
I'm used to stretching. Anyways, this game, Celeste.
Yes, that is the game that we are talking about today on this yet another Geek Show Spotlight.
So I had bought this game ages ago and only played 10 minutes of it and got distracted, and that 10 minutes was not long enough for me to see what I was missing.
Mm-hmm.
So I jumped back into it because, Josh, you started this a few weeks ago, and I figured, all right, that has a great reputation. We all own it. I guess we gotta go ahead and play it. And I opened this game up, and I played the whole way through it in one sitting. Which means I enjoyed it, if we're keeping tabs. It took me somewhere from 6 to 7 hours. I believe about 3 hours into that, I began to experience the worst pain I've ever felt in my hands.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
My hands were also sweating, which has never happened to me in a video game.
Really?
Well, outside of VR, I suppose. But I've never sweated before from operating a gamepad. When I finished this game in 1 7-hour sitting, I legitimately dipped my left hand in some ice water for a half hour.
Wow.
There you go.
Which makes me feel great about my age.
You know, it happens to the best of us, Dalton. And apparently it also happens to you.
That said, I fought through that pain, and I'm glad I did, and I was utterly stoked on this.
Man, this game controls really well.
Oh my God, yeah. Like if I had to pick, if I could only praise one thing about this game, it would be how just fluid and responsive the controls are.
Yeah, absolutely.
So on that level alone, I had previously thought that Super Meat Boy was the most effective platformer I'd ever played in terms of control, and this game just stomped all over it for me.
Wow.
I mean, I'm not talking overall quality yet. I'm just talking in terms of control and precision, which is very important here.
Yeah.
I have not played a better feeling game, period.
Yeah, especially like when it comes to later levels or harder to achieve strawberries, which we should mention. Josh said strawberries because they're a collectible in the game. You don't have to get them all, which is a nice thing about the game. Like, you don't have to get a certain amount to beat the game or get anything extra. It's just something that you can use to kind of gloat to friends, which I thought was a super cool thing.
They actually just exist in the game to taunt me because I apparently have some kind of mild video game related OCD, and if I see a collectible that I don't know how to get, but I can't get it, I will stay on the same screen for 20 minutes trying to get it before I move on.
Yeah.
That's what I learned about myself while climbing this mountain.
So I did not really try for the strawberries unless if it was right there and the solution was obvious, I went for it. But I didn't go out of my way to find hidden areas. And if it took me more than a few tries, I didn't keep going. I did immediately start playing the game over, though, so that I can try to go for the collectibles, which is not something I personally do. I don't try to 100% games. I don't think I will with this one because I know it's a nightmare to 100%. Not because of these collectibles, but because of going back and doing the B-sides and then the C-sides. And then I believe there are strawberries, maybe it's the golden strawberries, that require you to finish entire levels without dying once.
Yep, those are the golden ones.
Oh, wow.
And that just doesn't seem feasible to me in my lifetime.
Let me tell you, I watched
one
one clip of somebody playing through one of the C-sides, and that was enough to make me wake up screaming at night for like 3 weeks afterwards. And by that
Wow.
I mean this. They look absolutely goddamn nightmarish, like
Yeah.
in terms of difficulty.
Are either of you familiar with The Completionist on YouTube?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm a big fan of his videos.
I watched his video on this game, and he said, mind you, with this being a person who 100%s video games for a living, he said it took him 120 some hours.
Wow.
I'd believe it. I would believe it.
Yeah, so that's the kind of stuff we're talking about here. Difficulty, though, aside, especially if you're trying to be a completionist, this game is really welcoming to you not being great in video games, in that it has built-in assist features
Yeah.
to let you slow it down or cheat with invincibility if you desire. It actually won't even lock you out of achievements if you use it, which
I
is
think it's
pretty
some
problematic,
achievements,
to
isn't
be
it?
honest. But what's that?
I thought it was some achievements that it locks you out of.
I don't think it locks you out of anything for using assist mode.
Huh.
Not that I personally care about achievements at all, but there's a weird conflict where being excruciatingly difficult can obviously be part of the intended artistic design. Anything from Software comes to mind, obviously. At the same time, I kind of believe in, if you bought a game, you have the right to experience the whole thing, and you shouldn't be closed off from something you paid for just because you suck. So I enjoy the compromise of the people behind Celeste making an excruciatingly difficult game and then saying, but look, man, if you can't do it anyway, here's some cheats, whatever.
Yeah.
Just know that it's not the intended way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's something very endearing about that I think a lot of games of this caliber should still do, under the exact same opinion that you just had. I'm fully fully in agreement with you.
Yeah,
I'm firmly in the get good camp myself, but that's more of a personal thing, and it obviously doesn't affect me at all. I actually completely forgot that assist mode was a thing included in Celeste, and it obviously doesn't hurt me at all that it is. Didn't detract from my experience at all. So hey, I guess it's in there for the people that need it, and that's cool.
So
yeah, I mean, I didn't touch it, and
I was just about to ask.
I never would. I actually only know what features are in it because I think that completionist video mentioned them. But, you know, I suck at video games, and I still manage to fight my way through it. But, you know, there are people worse than me out there, and the game is a great piece of art as well. And I don't want people to not be able to experience the rest of the story and see all it has to offer just because they're not good enough.
One thing I really like about games like this, which I guess ultra hard platformers are kind of becoming a thing, and I wouldn't even call Celeste ultra hard, but it is a game where you are going to die a lot. And in some games that's going to be really frustrating, but in Celeste, and there are a few other games like it, I think one of the things that does really well that kind of cuts a lot of the frustration of dying out of the picture is that you're never going back further than the start of the screen that you're on, and you respawn immediately. So if you mess up a jump and you hit a spike or you fall into a cliff or whatever, you don't so much die as so much you just kind of get warped back to the start of that screen. You're never back more than 5 to 10 seconds to the part of the level that was giving you trouble. So it's a really nice loop of just being able to go back and say, like, oh, well, maybe I need to approach this jump from a different angle, or maybe I'm supposed to use my dash in this direction, or it kind of lends itself to it lends yourself to you iterating on how you think you're supposed to get past the screen. And especially later on in the game, getting past some of the screens felt just as much like I was solving a puzzle as I was, just doing like precision platforming.
Yeah.
There are definitely individual screens where I technically died like 40 times, but 38 of those were just figuring out what to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then I was perfectly able to do it once I understood.
You know, I'm kind of reflecting on something here before we continue. the assist mode kind of makes sense with what the game's story is about.
Which is anxiety.
Yeah.
And it's, at the same time, it being about anxiety and climbing a mountain, the most obvious metaphor, that also plays into it being a difficult game. You know, the artist intention here is that you'll feel like you conquered a mountain, like you had to try. But that said, in regards to the difficulty, that thing you just described, Josh, where it's not a serious punishment, you just go back to the beginning of the screen. Yeah. It has that in common with Super Meat Boy, which is another one of my favorite platformers for that reason. If you compare this to platformers that are Nintendo hard, the individual jumps and maneuvers you have to pull off are harder than anything in that era, but that era is harder because of the punishment for dying.
Right. Yeah, you die in I don't know, like I'm thinking of my favorite platformer of all time is Donkey Kong Country 2 for the Super Nintendo. But even in a game like that, when you die, you could get sent back 2.5 minutes back into the level from where you were, depending on whether or not you got the checkpoint or how far away from the checkpoint you were, or if, God forbid, you're at the end of the level and you lose your last life on the level and now you got to start the whole thing over.
Right.
So, any individual maneuver in that game is definitely not as difficult as what you're doing in Celeste, but some of the extra challenge there is in the, I guess, consistent application of mechanics that you have to do when playing a game like that where Celeste is going to demand that you be perfect for like 10 seconds, and after that 10 seconds, you don't have to do that part again.
Right.
It's a very different platforming philosophy than old school platformers, and it's one that I'm finding that I appreciate like quite a lot.
Yeah,
it's be perfect for 10 seconds instead of be really good for 5 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
I generally appreciate that more, if only because we're adults now with lives and other things to do, and I tend to not like anything that just feels like an excuse to pad out the length of the game.
Right.
So that's even outside of platforming. How much to punish you is kind of a different perspective altogether between older game design and modern.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Are we good to move on to the story?
Yeah, I suppose.
Because I don't know about you guys, but some of this actually kind of spoke volumes to me. Like, basically, your character's kind of just climbing the mountain because they want to do it, and they don't want.
They feel compelled. They're not.
Yeah. They don't. How do I want to say this?
They're not after a MacGuffin. It's just a compulsion they're feeling.
Yeah. Thank you. A lot of it, like, I don't know, especially with like the stuff that we do with Brock the Bummer Studios, like I've had sort of an anxiety of sharing it with people because there's that constant fear of, okay, they look at it one time and find the one thing that they don't like about it, and they don't like it, and I'm just sitting here like, shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's something about putting yourself out there that kind of spoke volumes to me in the story's narrative, you know, like, especially like the first boss you run into, which is the negative side of yourself. It's the one that protects you from feeling all of the bad, hate, and harm. I don't know. It was just something about being able to conquer something negative, or, you know, not even necessarily conquer, but understand where that can come from, like on a personal level. Like, it was very relatable, at least to me. I don't know about you guys.
It's a story that's exactly as simple as it needs to be, exactly as complex as it needs to be. There's not a whole lot there, but it's about anxiety. Climbing a mountain is a great metaphor for it.
Mm-hmm.
The interactions with this manifested other half of yourself is great.
Mm-hmm.
I love the way that this story coincides with the gameplay itself.
Mm-hmm.
The moment that other side of yourself begins to help you in your platforming is something that's going to stick with me. And,
Yes.
it's going to be one of those gaming moments I'll always remember.
Yeah.
As simple and obvious as the metaphor is, yeah, it just felt really good to have a story even that simple just tie into the gameplay in such a good way.
It was definitely a very simple story, and I could argue maybe possibly even a little bit heavy-handed at times, but it did what it was supposed to do. It kind of, it gave you a reason to want to climb this mountain. And yeah, the part where, okay, so I don't think this is an official name for the dark manifestation of your character, but your character is obviously named Madeline, and I've heard the dark side referred to as Badeline a lot, because she's Madeline, but bad.
Yes, I believe that's not.
I don't think that's canon, but I'm pretty sure it's fanon at this point.
Okay.
And that's I just keep thinking of her as Badeline. But you could probably just call her part of you or whatever, however Madeline refers to her throughout the entire game. But yeah, the point
Sure.
going up the summit when you two start cooperating, and it also kind of culminates in in a change in the gameplay as well, because now you've got 2 air dashes. That part was great.
It made life so much more fun.
And that's even though it's frequently introducing new obstacles to the levels, that's the only time it changes your actual abilities.
I really liked that about it.
At any point, and it feels great. I feel great that you nail all the controls in the first 5 minutes, and then the controls never change. There's never anything anything new to learn there. You just have to get better as the levels get harder, period. You're not given new abilities that make it easier. They just keep making the levels harder without giving you anything new to work with until that moment.
Every level will give you something new environmentally to work around, which I did really enjoy, because I feel like because it makes up for the fact that you, the character, aren't gaining new abilities, because each chapter is going to have some kind of new environmental thing for you to play with. I think my favorite ones were the red blobs in the temple chapter that would shoot you off in whatever direction that you were holding in.
Yeah,
that was my favorite chapter of the whole game. I loved that temple level, and playing around with those was a real big part of that.
Yeah, for me it was more I like you said, I really enjoyed how it made the game not get stagnant just because of the controls. But my favorite was probably the hotel, because
aesthetically, I like the hotel the most.
I like the hotel's design, because the parts where you would step would turn into that red demon goop stuff, and made it so that way you couldn't get back. Really made you think about your plan of attack, and also made you frantically freak the hell out when you didn't realize that those spots were there and you were being chased or needed to do some really quick aerial platforming.
Yeah. On a visual level, I'm going to go as far as to say this is the best looking 2D game I've played.
Wow.
And it had to grow on me. I actually wasn't sold for the first 10 minutes. The game as a whole got sold for me the first time you see Badeline, and that's kind of when it all came together, and it was no longer something generic. Actually, it's funny, if I have to think about my 2 favorite moments of the game, it's the first time Badeline breaks out of the mirror and then you're chased through the rest of the level.
Yeah.
And the next time is when you're chasing down Badeline.
Yeah, that was an awesome scene.
Yeah, that was great.
I died a lot in that, though. I ain't gonna lie.
Oh yeah. I collected a lot of deaths there, but that was also for me the most rewarding bit of it. That's where I felt the best when I made it to the next screen. And it would make you accomplish several screens in a row, and you'd have to manage to hit her while she's shooting projectiles at you. When you hit her, you'd get a recharge back, and you'd have to use it to make it back to a platform before you landed. I felt like I had developed a lot of skill at that point, and that I was being tested, and I was surviving that test, and yeah, it just felt great.
I want to move on to one of the biggest things I hated about this game, and that was the segments with wind.
Okay.
Honestly, I felt like that was probably the part where the game did feel padded for me. Just because those platforming sections would have been hard enough without it. Or, how there were two forms of clouds that you could use, the pink ones disappearing after you jumped off of them and the blue ones just remaining there. If they would have used those in those segments instead of wind, I think it would have gone a lot better.
I'm trying to remember. I think this is chapter 4. I don't remember specifically struggling with the wind. It's kind of a platforming game trope at this point, that there are going to be levels where the wind is buffering you, and yeah, they're never my favorite segments, but I don't remember Celeste being particularly egregious about it.
I felt it slow me down, but it wasn't a big deal.
Well, there was the ones that slowed you down, and then there were the ones that really slowed you down.
I will say that when I got through those parts, I didn't feel as rewarded as in other difficult parts. Like in that section, if a windy area was holding me up and I finally got it on my 10th try, I felt like, all right,
it didn't
I got it.
feel like it was your fault.
As opposed to chasing down Battleline, where I'm like, yeah, I got it, I'm great.
Right. Like these parts did not feel like it was your fault that you were dying, at least for me. You know?
It stayed fair.
Well, not the win for me.
I could see it being less fun, but I still found it fair. I never felt like I got cheated at any point.
Yeah, I suppose, like, maybe I'm just being a little harsh, but like at the same time, I don't know. I'd have to. I don't want to.
I mean, just picking out a least favorite area, I agree.
Yeah. I don't know. I felt kind of frustrated with it. Like, man, they really didn't need to make the wind knock you back that hard for you to progress. You know, like, you don't have to move like half a pixel every 10 seconds.
You know, going back to the game, I played through it on Steam, and then I considered grabbing it on my Switch and doing a more complete run that way, just because I spend more time on my Switch lately. But I realized I will absolutely break my Switch if I try to play this on it.
Yeah,
that's fair.
Not because I'll get mad and like smash it on my knee or anything, but just the force of my hands squeezing the device while playing.
Yeah, there was a lot of white knuckling in this game. Now, after you beat the game, you have the chapter after you beat it, where you get the 4 hearts, at least 4 hearts in any of the stages. B-sides, I want to say it is. Or no, there's some in the A-sides too.
The hearts are in the A-sides, yeah.
Okay. I didn't get to do that.
Not gonna lie, I did not collect a single heart throughout my entire playthrough.
I collected 1, and it was by complete accident. It was towards the end of the game.
I also played this game, and I didn't look up like anything about how to do anything. So I don't know if it was you were supposed to stumble across them, and I was just really, really bad at doing that, or if some of them are more secret or puzzle solvey to find, but I didn't find a single one.
I actually
I
had to look up one segment.
This leads me to a, you know what, I googled exactly once.
Yeah.
I YouTubed exactly one jump I couldn't figure out what I was supposed to do on.
Was it towards the end of the game?
It was during a windy part where I couldn't figure out that I was trying to hold on to the wrong side of a platform or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But this looking for the collectibles leads me to one nitpick where, like I said, first time through it, I didn't really actively try to collect much unless it was right there in my face and the solution was obvious. But I did start over again and play level 1 and see, let's see if I'm interested in hunting down all the collectibles. I believe stage 1 has 20 strawberries, and I played through it again without a guide and looking things up. I just started a new save, played through it again, and that time I got, I think, 17 of the 20 strawberries. Now, I didn't expect to find it all on the first shot without a guide open, but I was a little upset that there were moments where I couldn't tell if I was heading towards a secret strawberry or if I was just headed the right way.
Yeah,
and then I would lock myself out.
There could have been a bit more of a directional thing, like, hey, this will take you towards the story, this will take you towards the extras.
Yeah, there were moments where it wasn't clear. I would look in 2 ways, and I'd say, one of these is the secret. Is it this one? And I'd go that way, and it would turn out it was the main way, and I was now locked of somewhere I obviously knew there was a secret.
Yeah, that was another thing that I did not like, is there were platforms that were like pieces of land, and then there were the thin platforms, and you couldn't drop down those thinner platforms.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
and they use that to lock you out of going backwards through portions of the level. This was an issue that I had with it too, and probably the reason why I don't intend to go back and 100% this game, because I feel like the chapters are very long, and that's fine for like a first time playthrough, but if I'm going back and trying to collect everything from every chapter, and I'm not free to run back and forth and look for the things that I'm missing, then that just means you're going to have to play linearly through these levels over and over again to find things. And without any kind of map or any way to determine where you're going and where you're supposed to be going, that just doesn't really appeal to me. I think that, and I really hope that this isn't something that's already in the game, and I just didn't notice because I haven't tried to play it again. But I think going backwards, I would really like to, when replaying a chapter, be at least being given the option to load in at a certain like predetermined number of checkpoints within the chapter, as opposed to just starting over. Like I don't understand why these chapters can't be worlds that are broken up into stages as opposed to like one big chunk, you know? I feel like,
and even then, I think that if you had to restart the entire level over, give you a map of the areas you have explored and the ones that you didn't, like, be grayed out.
Yeah, I mean that's fair too. I really just think breaking the chapters up into stages would have solved most of my complaints, because it just gives you a lot to replay if you get slightly further through the world than you need to be to find a secret, and there's no way the game gives you to go back at all. I'm not going to replay. Okay. I'm not going to replay 40 minutes of a level because I got to minute 45 and accidentally walked one screen too far to the right. You know?
Right. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I also did not try to, like I said, I started a new save, so I also did not try to restart a level and see if it would let you start at a checkpoint. That might make or break whether I'm going for the collectibles too. I might play through it again whether I'm trying to complete it or not, just because I really liked the game.
The game's just fun to play. I think maybe I would like it less if I tried to go full completionist on it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
However, if you do have that option, and I have a bad feeling you don't, but if you do have that option, I still kind of like that they're pressed into really long levels, because for me it helped with the metaphor and my personal feeling of accomplishment that, like, you know, a really hard long level might take you an hour, and I think it actually increased my sense of accomplishment that it took me an hour to fight my way through that struggle, as opposed to spending 10 minutes 6 times to get through smaller achievements.
Okay,
sure. I can buy
and maybe
into
that's all. Yeah, and maybe that's also why I did it in one big long sitting, is because once I was halfway up the mountain, I wanted to finish that accomplishment of getting up the mountain. I didn't want to, remove myself from the mental state I'm currently in and come back to it with fresh eyes in a day
Mm-hmm.
and start my emotional journey all over again.
I think I had to do it in 2 sittings because you were up its ass on Steam, and I had to wait for you to beat it because I had to steal your copy of the game. How long did it ultimately take you to beat the first run, Dalton?
It was somewhere between 6 and 7 hours.
Okay. It took me, I have a screenshot of the final thing. It took me 8 hours, 5 minutes, and 6 seconds to beat the game.
Okay. I didn't take my screenshot. I don't have my exact death count on hand, and it's not really useful for comparison because we all didn't go for the same number of collectibles.
Right.
But I ended up with 1,200 and something.
For deaths?
Yeah.
Josh, how many deaths do you remember how many you had?
I was in the I guess 4 figures, you could say. Like, I was in the thousands for sure. I also had just over 100 strawberries when the game was over, and I think it ended up taking me about 6.5 hours to get to the end.
I have my stats here. I died 1,445 times. Dalton, do you remember how many strawberries you got? Because I feel like I'm going to be the worst out of all of us.
It was very little. It might have been like 30 because I didn't really try.
24 for me. I did the worst on the strawberries, man.
Although I'm curious about another run where like I'm not trying to complete it, but I'm trying to do better, because I know that like my first time through the first level, I might have had like 40 deaths on it and like 3 strawberries. But when I played through it again, I got 3 deaths and like 17 strawberries, which is a huge amount of improvement from just finishing the game once and getting good.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about doing another run just to see how many deaths and strawberries the second time.
One thing that I actually really liked about some of the strawberry challenges in this game is that they were actually really good ways to kind of teach you more about the mechanics of the game without any kind of tutorial thing happening. So let me talk about like one of the most prominent instances of my mind. This was back in the temple world again, where you're screwing around with all the red bubbles that'll shoot you off in random directions. There was one strawberry I remember getting where you were going through like a pretty small size screen. There was one red bubble that was shooting you up into a tunnel of those pink crystals that killed you if you touched them. And the tunnel went straight up, and it would go off to the right, and then there was another bubble off to the right. Obviously, when you get shot out of those bubbles, you can't curve, and also the way the tunnel you were going up was short enough that if you just shot straight up out of the bubble, you would hit the pink crystals and immediately die before actually popping out of the bubble and regaining control of Madeline. So I remember thinking to myself, well, the only way that this getting the strawberry makes sense at all is if I'm able to dash to break out of this bubble earlier enough to break out of it before it's finished going its full trajectory. And it turns out that you are in fact able to do that, and doing that is the only way to actually, you have to time that dash a couple times to get to like the center of this maze and get to this particular strawberry. But the way that the challenge was set up, I had to learn something about the mechanics of the game and then apply it to be able to solve that puzzle and get that challenge. And it was just a really satisfying like small loop of gameplay that kind of stuck with me as I went and finished the rest of the game. And there were probably a ton of other little examples of the strawberry being, I guess, kind of the carrot behind the stick of like making you really think about and engage in the game mechanics. There were probably so many more instances that were pulled off so well that I don't even realize that I was being taught something at the time.
A lot of show don't tell.
Absolutely. But one of the things that I really liked about those strawberries was that seeking out those challenges, I did feel like I was learning how to better control my character and how to better interact with certain aspects of the game environment.
Yeah.
The proper tutorial is 30 seconds long, and it's literally just, hey, this button to grab walls and this button to dash.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now go.
Yeah, pretty much. Can I know Josh's favorite, but Dalton, what was your favorite quote unquote power up? Where you had Josh's is the red bubble, I'm assuming.
The feathers were a ton of fun.
I loved the feathers up until you get to near the summit. Because I was playing on my MacBook with my PS4 controller, and the D-pad on the PS4 for me is the best. It's like the best D-pad just because it's just large.
Mm-hmm.
I could not control that damn feather with the D-pad. So it was a constant balance of being super fast from switching from digital to analog movement to be able to get around certain like tight corners with spikes.
Wait, so were you trying to do most of the platforming with the D-pad?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I beat the game mostly with the D-pad.
I beat the game with the D-pad.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, I wouldn't have taken that route for this game. All right.
It felt like maybe it's the Smash Bros. In both of us that like maybe we were needing more precise movement. Like instead of having up B jump, you know what I mean? It's like maybe that kind of mechanical
I despise
thought.
playing 2D platformers with an analog stick. I can't do it. I will refuse to do it anytime I have the option.
It just feels less precise.
I don't know. It's because when I'm playing, if I'm playing an old platformer that obviously only had digital, if I'm playing an old Sonic or Mario or Mega Man, I'm gonna use the D-pad. But with a modern platformer, it seems to me like a joystick would by definition be more precise because you have more than 8 degrees of movement.
You really don't in this game, though.
No, yeah. I think the big difference for you, Dalton, is that you're using Xbox One controllers where the primary spot for your thumb would be the joystick. And let's be fair, Xbox One controller D-pads are really chintzy.
I like the D-pad on the Xbox One.
I think that the PS4 not trying to derail this, but the PS4 D-pad is way more precise and ergonomic. But it's also a different plastic and material and maybe even different like triggers underneath of it. You know what I mean?
In either case, you definitely needed analog for the feather bits.
Absolutely,
for sure.
You did, yeah. And trying to switch between the D-pad and that analog was the most stressful shit in the world.
Yeah, and I believe the bit where you start cooperating with Battleline, you're kind of you're working with both at once, if I recall correctly. Like within a single segment, you were working with doing feather bits and then catching up to Battleline and then her throwing you up in the air and then doing more feather bits.
Yeah, there was at least one segment like that.
Yeah, I enjoyed the hell out of that personally, but I was on the analog stick the whole time.
The climb back up to the summit was probably my most favorite part of the game. It just felt so good to have the second dash, understanding each individual quote unquote power up or mechanic in each stage. I don't know, the music and that all those segments were phenomenal. Like in the summit.
There we go. We hadn't touched the music yet. This composer, Lena Raine. This is someone now that I am going to play games just because she worked on them.
Really?
I have that with a few people. Like, I'll play anything.
Austin Wintory
Nobuo works on Austin Wintory.
Yeah.
I've looked up games just because he's done them. I did DuckTales just because of Jake Kaufman doing the remaster. I am going to keep looking up what Lena Raine does after this. This is not like a top 10 game soundtrack for me, but
it was moving.
It's a top 25. It's memorable for me. It fits the moods. The moment where the music really hit me and I was like, yeah, I get it, I'm into this, was the moment where Battleline first breaks out of the mirror and then all the percussion comes into that song and changes the whole atmosphere of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Even the silences in this game were fantastic. You know, like in the beginning when there was no music. If I'm not mistaken, there was no music in the beginning.
Yeah. Knowing when less is more.
Yeah. They nailed that as far as the audio goes, not even just music. How did you feel about the other characters in the games, guys? Or in the game?
I didn't need them. They were very little of it.
Yeah.
I feel like the hotel manager contributed more to the plot than any of the other side characters, strangely. The feeling of like Madeline not actually liking him and being annoyed and yet still wanting to please him and not leave. And then Badeline's like, oh, come the fuck on and say it, man.
Right, yeah. I've got to say,
that was all really relatable.
What was the dude's name? The selfie guy? Theo, thank you.
Yeah.
He had a very interesting role as far as the anxiety mechanic goes. He was the one that gave you the advice, for example, to let Battleline go.
Mm-hmm.
And it was great and sound advice, but it wasn't the advice that she needed. It was the ultimate goal was for them to be able to understand each other, not let it go.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that did a lot for the story. Like,
he seems cool and calm for most of the story, except he's obviously not if he has this useful anxiety advice.
Right. And that's the thing, like, there's something super relatable about his character where, like, we have a friend that wants to give all the advice, and I'm sure I'm that friend to somebody. But it's appreciated, but it's not always the right thing to do. Or maybe not necessarily the right thing to do, but not always the right thing to say for the right context.
Mm-hmm.
And I really kind of appreciated how they threw that into the plot. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There was just a lot of relatable moments for me. I feel like I keep coming back to that, but
I will say I would have preferred if he wasn't like the perfect millennial narcissist.
Yeah.
Like if he wasn't just an unlikable type of person to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
The personality they gave him doesn't really matter though, because at the end of the day, he was for most of his screen time just a reason for Celeste to share her thoughts out loud.
Yeah.
Like that's why Batman has his Robin, was so that it wasn't Batman talking to himself.
I'll give you that, but at the same time, he was also the one trying to encourage her getting out of her shell.
Mm-hmm.
And,
I mean, there's exceptions to it.
Oh yeah, certainly. I know exactly what you mean. Like, that was definitely something for us to understand what the character was feeling, but I think there was a little more to him than just that.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
The old lady's laugh was the best part, though. Just the constant ha 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 flying out of her head.
Yeah, she's a great like anime grandma.
Yeah.
That is a perfect description.
Serves that role well.
Oh, actually, Josh, here's a specific question for you.
Okay.
You hated the voices in Okami.
Yeah, I did.
Did you hate them here too?
I didn't like them any better, I'll tell you that much.
Okay. Because I felt like it was a nice touch, but it could have been less in volume. You know what I mean?
What I liked about I don't even know what you call this trope of like gibberish playing in the background as the text box fills up for a character. What I like
Simlish.
Sure. What I like about the Simlish in this game as opposed to Okami is that you could just kind of like double tap A real quick to fill up the whole text box with all of their real quick, and all the Simlish stops. So I could just like quick load all of the text and read it and not have to watch it scroll on and listen to that. I hate that sort of thing. Yeah. I don't know why. I don't know why it gets to me so much, but it does.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Fair.
I tried Okami, maybe it was a couple years ago, And yeah, I quit it very quickly because I couldn't stand that sound, and I tried to ignore it and fight through it and get to the point where I could appreciate it, but I think I was in that game for 40 minutes and had still only gotten to a point where, like, I was technically in gameplay by now, but it was still just things like, learn to walk over there, and then learn to press jump. I was still not in the game proper after, like, 40 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I totally quit because I couldn't stand that sound, and I couldn't stand that I wasn't actually playing the game yet. This game, it didn't bother me, at least not nearly on that level. You mentioned it could have been quieter. Relative to Okami, it is already way quieter.
Okay, yeah, I'll give you that.
I also don't feel that it adds anything to the game.
I appreciated that it tried to give an inflection on how do I want to say this? It gave an inflection on the emotion the character was feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. You're right. It doesn't add too much, especially when you already have like the constant like face block in the text box.
Yeah.
Yeah. It could have been better if they wanted to do it. Like, I don't know. I'm nitpicking at this point with it, but I don't know. Like, it was a nice touch, but eh.
All right. I think we've all been generally positive on this game. I think I might have loved it a fair bit more than you guys, but I think we all overall really liked it.
I thought this was a fantastic platformer. It's definitely not my favorite game of all time, but it's really good. I would give this, I think, a solid 8.5 out of 10 for me. It's really, really.
I'm around the 8 or 9 mark,
I'd recommend it to probably anybody.
Especially because of the assist mode.
It's not approaching my favorite game. It is approaching my favorite 2D platformer to the point where I may have to go back and replay Super Mario World before I can comment on what the best 2D platformer is. And I feel bad for every 2D platformer we spotlight from this point on, including some we've already started playing that I also loved. So
yeah, no, I'm in agreement with Josh. Like, it's a really good game, and the only thing that should hold you back is if you're broke, because you can beat this game completely without having to worry about constant failure or not being good enough.
I do have to wonder if the game is still rewarding if you have to use assist mode.
I don't know.
I feel like you kind of miss out on the same feeling of accomplishment that Madeline does when you get to the top of the mountain if you just kind of let the game do it for you.
Yeah. You'll get to witness the story that was written. You'll get to witness the great level design. You'll get to appreciate the music.
But you probably won't connect with it the way the game intended you to.
Yeah,
thanks for criticizing my opinion, guys. I appreciate the fuck out of that,
but I do feel like you'll be missing something.
But
all right, I think we're done, guys.
Yeah. If you're listening to this without playing this game, you fucking ruined it for yourself. You gave me anxiety. Go play this game and correct your problem.
Think of the feather, Alex. Think of the feather.